Temple walked at 12 months, so he had been walking for an entire month before we went in for the next set of vaccinations. And the minute we walked into the pediatric office, Lou, his twin, she's screaming her head off. I mean, she knows what's going on. She doesn't want the doctor touching her. I look up, and there she's got the shots lined up. 3 for him, 3 for her. By the second shot, Lucinda had flipped herself over, so I had to stop looking at what I was doing, unstrap her, get her out. Well, the minute I get her out and I calm her down a little bit and I look over, he's screaming. I look at the shots, and I notice that one of hers was gone. There are only 2 shots left for her. And I asked the nurse practitioner, I said, what happened to that other shot? She says, oh my goodness, I gave it to him. I said, which one was it? She said, it was the other MMR. I said, call the doctor. This baby is screaming his head off. You've given him an extra shot. I don't know what the effects of that's going to be. We're leaving. And I left. So she never got her shots. I go home. This baby cried. I put him down on his little blanket. He starts banging his head on the floor. Next morning, I go in his room, and he's staring in the space, and he's looking around like this, as if, he's a bit paralyzed. Not the baby who was always doing this every morning and smiling for me to get him out of bed. And I pick him up, and he does this. And I said, what has happened to my baby? So I called the clinic, and I said, I think my child's had adverse reaction to those shots yesterday. She says, no. I'm waiting for a representative from Merck. I don't think it was a reaction to that.
Bill Thompson looked at African Americans. He saw that those African Americans that got the MMR on time were 2.64 times more likely to get an autism diagnosis than those African Americans that received the MMR after 3 years of age.
What this was suggesting is that among the blacks, the ones that were getting vaccinated earlier were more likely to have autism.
At that point, the group of researchers that was working on this particular study, they were having weekly meetings. Colleen Boyle, who was the head of developmental disabilities branch, and Marshalyn Jurgen Alsop, who was one of Thompson's direct supervisors, Frank DeStefano, who was the head of the immunization safety office, and then a postdoctoral research associate named Tanya Bassin. In that meeting, Thompson brought up the fact that African Americans were showing a highly statistically significant risk of autism if they got the MMR on time.
What is said in these closed-door meetings? I mean, do people say, oh, well, this is unacceptable, or is it just, do they always say, oh, this can't be right, or?
I'm not going to lie, but I also don't want to say things to you right now that aren't some written form.
Right.
The analysis regarding the African Americans was the 8 on the Richter scale earthquake that just shook through the CDC.
I take him to see the pediatrician that I know. And she looks at me, she closes the door, and she whispers, she says, Sheila, I believe he has autism. I said, what? Like Rain Man? She says something like that. I'm going to refer you out to a neurologist. And we go see the neurologist the next week. He says he has every classical symptom of autism. I do not believe this. I was angry. When he was explaining to me what Canner's autism is, he told me he was born that way. I said, no, he wasn't.
Clearly there was a very high risk of autism in African American children. But here's the thing. We know that autism is 4 times more common in boys. And so to see that effect mirrored in the African American children was a compelling finding.
When I looked at African American males only, the relative risk was 3.36. It just blew my mind. And that's when I wanted to call Bill Thompson on the phone. And his statement to me was, oh, you found it.
It appears in the final publication is that race in general is downplayed.
Of course it is.
Temple's twin is amazing. She is fluent in 3 languages. She speaks French like a native. She is an A student. She plays classical piano. With all of the guilt that I feel from that day, one of the best decisions I made for her was to walk out of that office without her being vaccinated. At the end of this journey, I don't want to be one of those mothers standing there saying what I wish I would have, could have, should have done. I want to be able to say, I gave it everything that I had. I gave it my best shot. His twin is going into the 11th grade. And for someone who still can't manage to cross the street, now am I grateful he's here? You bet. I'm grateful my son lived. And I was so naive that he would live a fulfilling life. He would end up being a happy man, having a family. My dreams for him. And